told y'all China runs part of America, owns part of America. Well, we're going to get into this story here, y'all. Well, y'all got to be very vigilant. This woman just uncovered more than 100 secret overseas Chinese police stations in America. Like I said, America owed China money. Now these Chinese police stations throughout America, throughout the country. Secrets are being uncovered, y'all. Secrets are being uncovered. Let's get into this video, ladies and gentlemen.
Is outrageous to think that the Chinese police would attempt to set up shop, in New York, let's say, without proper coordination. It violates sovereignty and circumvents standard judicial law enforcement cooperation processes.
Hey all, I'm John Avlon, and this is Reality Check on the Extremist Beat. Now, in the struggle between democracies and autocracies, there have been increasing reports of foreign governments ignoring borders and reaching right into free societies. Now, I'm not just talking about the so-called spy balloons, but on-the-ground efforts by secret police to intimidate individuals in immigrant communities. In fact, get this, there are more than 100 Chinese government-backed overseas police stations operating in more than 50 sovereign nations right now, including the United States and Canada. That's according to a recent blockbuster report by the human rights NGO Safeguard Defenders. Now, in recent months, the FBI has conducted raids of some of these accused local outposts. And in late 2022, 7 Chinese nationals were charged by the Department of Justice for intimidating a longtime U.S. resident to return to China to face charges as part of an anti-corruption effort known as Operation Fox Hunt. Now, the Chinese government denies any wrongdoing. They say that these foreign officers are just used to do things like renew licenses. But at the same time, they tout the stat that some 230,000 Chinese nationals were persuaded to return to face criminal trials in China from overseas between April 2021 and July 2022 alone. Now, persuaded to return sounds like a euphemism for something a lot uglier, because often this persuasion process is coercive. For example, threatening the safety of family members at home if the target doesn't comply. Taken together, it is a stunning breach of state sovereignty and a significant flexing of Chinese muscle overseas to assert the international reach of the CCP. Joining us to discuss the reality behind these shadowy efforts is Laura Harth. She's the primary author of this report on the proliferation of overseas Chinese police stations. Laura, thanks for joining us on Reality Check. Describe some of the intimidation tactics that are used by these overseas police officers.
There's basically 3 types of operations to persuade a person to return. So the first one is going after family members back home. So either take away their benefits, visit them regularly, visits by the local police to kind of persuade them, to persuade their relatives abroad that it's in their interest to return home, detain them, arrest them, even disappear or prosecute them in the stead of the person that they're after and who's overseas. But if that's not sufficient, they will either send covert agents abroad from Beijing or from other places in China to go after the target directly, to harass them, intimidate them, persuade them to return to China. Now, if even that doesn't work, the Chinese authorities actually wrote this down for us to see. They may use luring or entrapment of individuals, so they might try to get a person to a country from where it's easier to kind of retrieve that person, bring them back to China because, the judicial safeguards are less in that particular place. But they may even use kidnapping. And so the Chinese authorities expressly state that kidnapping is a legitimate means to retrieve a person. For example, we have Swedish citizen Gui Minhai, who was kidnapped in 2016 in Thailand, who's still in China.
Laura, this is just such a brazen, Big Brother-esque attempt to overturn the rule of law inside democracies. What does it say about the Chinese government's respect for rule of law inside democracies and their expansionist ambitions?
it shows clearly they have no respect whatsoever, right? The PRC is very big on, claiming territorial sovereignty, claiming sovereignty when it comes to, criticizing people that call out their human rights record, which obviously, is one of gross human rights violations, even genocide.
One of the difficulties, of course, is that there's a degree of pushback, right? That says if you're confronting these sorts of efforts, that it could bleed into a sort of xenophobia. And on the other hand, to not confront them is to participate or acquiesce in the abuse of people from these immigrant communities. How do you walk that line?
Well, the media attention has been amazing on these reports. It's obviously put the issue on the map, but there's always that kind of, as you say, balance that needs to be sought. But we do think it's important to highlight these issues and not fall into the trap that the Chinese Communist Party kind of wants us to get into, and that is to remain silent. So I think it's our duty to speak up on both, sides of the equation. Obviously, speak out against any anti-Asian and anti-Chinese hatred, but call out the crimes of the Chinese Communist Party wherever they're happening.
Given that these brazen attacks on the rule of law are designed to undermine the rule of law in free and fair societies, how do you recommend specifically we solve this problem in a comprehensive but constructive way?
The first thing is really call out the Chinese authorities on what they're doing, right? Make it very clear that we think this is clandestine, this is illegal, this is a brazen violation of national sovereignty and international law. The second is building on that coalition, really share best practices, share information, share intelligence. So we need democratic countries to actually work together, law enforcement to work together and come together on this. We do have a means to actually hold these people accountable, the individuals that are doing this. In March, the US stated that they would issue Magnitsky human rights sanctions, targeted sanctions.
Laura Harth, with the work you're doing is incredibly important, I think, to building a 21st century of the kind we all want to live in.